The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Happy Friday, everybody. It's, I don't know what the weather's like where you're at, Neil, but it is a scorcher in Southern California this weekend. I think today's going to be in the 90s, and this weekend's going to be insane. How's the weather where you're at, Neil?
We're actually doing great. We have a perfect 72 degrees controlled environment here in Chicago. It was really hot the last couple of days, but now it's actually quite nice. Sunny every day, although it's going to pop back in the 80s, high 80s pretty soon. But right now it's perfect.
Nice. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today. My name's Adrian Benjamins, and I'm joined by Neil Rochlani. Neil, when we first got together this morning, we were kind of wondering what we were going to talk about today. You know, it's kind of, we're going through this like lull period. It's kind of like the after effects of free agency, but we got some summer league. What do you think, Neil?
Yeah, I guess I'm talking. I mean, there isn't much activity on the free agency front, but we can talk about what's gone on the last couple of days and maybe even go back even further than that and talk about our thoughts. And also, summer league is starting to pick up. We've had a few different data points now from a couple of different players, big name players, so we can talk on that too. And then we can debate our draft strategy. I love yours. I still love your strategy of being very fixed on bigs and point guards. I'm intrigued by that. So I want to explore that more if we have time. If not, we can just focus on some of these young prospects and then some of these free agent signings.
Yeah, I am really looking forward to, as soon as free agency's done, I'm going to kind of build this ranking sheet. And one of the things that I find when I'm building my ranking sheet is I'll get in these conundrums like, dang, I have these three players here. I'm not quite sure how to rank them. And whenever I run in those situations, I write it down. And I think it'd be a fun game for you and I to play. Like, Neil, three guys, how would you put them, you know, best to worst? So I'm going to kind of get that together for a future show. I think it'd be a lot of fun. And I'm really looking forward to, I can't wait for mock drafts to start and for us to really get into these rankings and just to see how guys are valued. It'll be really interesting. But yeah, let's go ahead and start just kind of the latest going on free agency. The absolute latest thing to happen is Kyle O'Quinn has agreed to a 1-year deal with the Pacers, a $4.5 million deal. Neil, Kyle O'Quinn's a guy, not a high fantasy value guy, but a guy who does put up fantasy value when given the minutes. Do you think he can kind of carve out some fantasy value with the Pacers?
Unfortunately, I don't, but he is one of those guys. So some of these backups, you know, when a player goes down, sometimes there's this rush to pick up the backup right away because there's this sense that the backup's going to kind of produce what the starter did, or at least close to it. And that's true for some of these guys. And Quinn's in that category. You know, it doesn't always happen. Sometimes that can really backfire on you, and I don't think that's a good strategy. But if you know you have a really good backup who's there when someone who's a starter goes down, can produce, and then you pounce on them once you hear the news. Quinn is that backup. I don't think, though, in a healthy Indiana lineup, he's really relevant for 12-team, even 14-team leagues. But he is someone who's you should grab if there's news on Miles Turner or if it looks like he is starting getting in the rotation. Because if I'm wrong about that and he is getting 20 plus minutes, he might have fantasy value. He does put up a lot of different categories, so including assists and blocks, which are hard to get. So that's where I'm with him. He's not someone I want to pick up or put on my watch. He's someone I want on my watch list, and I'll pick up if there's an injury. Other than that, I'm really not thinking he's a fantasy asset.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, you know, Kyle O'Quinn, though, is a guy I often hoped that he would get traded somewhere where to a team that really lacked front court depth, because given the minutes, man, this guy can produce. But in Indiana, we know Miles Turner is the man up front for that team. They're also pretty stacked at the power forward spot. They're bringing back Thaddeus Young. Domantas Sabonis looked pretty good. He took a step forward last season. I'd like to see him get more minutes. So, I think O'Quinn's value takes a hit going to the Pacers. I think, with no Kristaps Porzingis, I thought he could get some run for the Knicks. So I don't really like this move for his fantasy value. But for reality purposes, it is a great addition for the Pacers, man. They look really good. I believe, did they also add Tyreek Evans? I think that they did.
I think that's, if it's not finalized, it's been talked about like it has been. So I don't know if it's actually been signed yet, or it's like a confirmed deal that just hasn't been signed, or if it's like 90% there. But that's what I think it's going to happen from what I understand.
I really like this team, man. We know the East got a little bit worse with LeBron leaving. The Cavs, I don't even know if the Cavs will even sniff the playoffs anymore. And, Darren Collison, they're bringing back huge. Victor Oladipo, this guy could be an MVP one day. And then, Miles Turner, we're hoping he progresses and becomes the guy that we hoped he'd be. But I really like this team, man. I think they can make some noise. Okay.
You're definitely a team. I just want to wrap up by saying, they're a team on the rise. It'll be interesting to see where their over-under win total is at and if there's an angle there.
Wait, you know what, though? Yeah. Neil, question for you. This is a fantasy show. What do you think about their team for fantasy in general? Are you pretty high on guys like Miles Turner and Victor Oladipo? I know Dan is a big fan of Thaddeus Young. He's got that attitude. What do you think, Neil?
I had that attitude last year for sure. I was definitely feeling that. I basically just fell in love with Dan Besbris's advice last year and tended to copy it. But I know I've always liked that attitude because he does do a lot of stats. He's someone that flies under the radar that kind of like a Markieff Morris does many things but doesn't get much attention. What I like for this year, though, I'm a little worried about Oladipo being too overvalued, although he showed the potential to be an incredible fantasy asset. I think I don't have the numbers in front of me, but certainly first or second round value. I think he'll go in the second round. Perhaps if I'm there late in the second round, he's still available, I'll take him. I don't know. That's just like off the top of my head without really doing any research. Miles Turner, I'm a little more excited about because he did struggle last year, had the injuries, didn't really perform when he was on the court, may have taken a hit in terms of the perception of what he can do. So if he falls maybe a round or so, maybe I'll take him. That's kind of how I look at it. Collison, I think, is not bad for like your third point guard. Mm-hmm. But if Evans is there, he could get into those minutes and also get into that role of being a facilitator. So I don't know what to do with Tyreek because I don't think he's going to be starting. But we'll see. We'll see what the rotation looks like. What are your thoughts on this team for fantasy?
Yeah, I really like your take. I a little nervous for fantasy purposes about Tyreek. I think there are times where we're going to see Tyreek on the court. He could play small forward, so he could be on the court at the same time as Collison and Victor Oladipo. We know Tyreek loves to have the ball in his hands. There's three guys right there that love to be the ball handler. So he could definitely take a little bit away from both Victor Oladipo and Darren Collison. I'm huge on Victor Oladipo. I just had him last year in a lot of leagues, and it was a joy to have him on my fantasy team. And I agree with you. His value is going to be so high from what he did last season. Is you probably got to get him the very beginning of the second round, maybe the end of the first round even. So that's it's zapping a lot of the value out of his draft day price. But I still love Victor Oladipo. I'm starting to buy into the Miles Turner hype again. I'm hearing good things about him in the offseason, that he's in great shape. His workouts have looked insane. So I know last year was a big letdown for all you people that took a shot on Miles Turner in round 2. I took him in one league at the very end of round 1. That's how high I was on him. And so, I think he was somewhere above the 50 range he ended the season. So, but I think his draft day price is going to drop significantly. So I think, you may be able to snatch Miles Turner up now in the 4th or 5th round. And if that's the case, I think he could be worth that price. So in general, I do like the Pacers for fantasy, and really excited to see what happens with this team.
Yeah, where do you want to go next on this free agency train? I can't find too many other announcements. Do you see anything in the last couple of days I've missed?
One thing I want to hit on, it's not really a signing, but it's just kind of interesting news, is restricted free agent Marcus Smart. It sounds like he's pretty bummed out because the Celtics haven't contacted him about his free agency. They haven't made an offer to him. And I think, Marcus Smart's a guy who is really committed to that team, to the team system, and I think he's feeling a little hurt that, he's not hearing anything from the Celtics side. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, I haven't followed it that closely, but he does seem like a player that really thrives in that system. I do worry about his fantasy. I mean, he's not even a great fantasy value there when he's coming off the bench because of his shooting percentages are pretty weak, but when he got those starters minutes, he was a good pickup, or at least a serviceable pickup. I don't. I would be very curious to see, or I would expect his value to really drop if he goes to another team. I think he's a big part of that mentality in Boston, and also kind of like brings the leadership and thrives in that environment. I don't know if he'll be the same somewhere else. So, not just as a fantasy player, but as an actual player, because I'm not sure his skill set translates. He can't shoot it from outside, although he takes a lot of shots. He's a defensive first player. So yeah. I'm just trying to think out loud here. I'm not sure what's going to happen to him, but I've always kind of avoided him though for fantasy because of his percentages, his field goal percentage.
Neil,
do you have a different thought about him?
No, man. You and I a lot of times are very similar in our approach on guys. Marcus Smart has always been a guy that I've avoided. In most of my leagues, I draft really well for field goal percentage, and he's a field goal percentage killer. And so I've always avoided him. But, the other thing that's real interesting is the Celtics are now loaded in their backcourt with the emergence of Terry Rozier, and they're going to get hopefully a healthy Kyrie Irving back. And I hate to say it, but I could kind of see why the Celtics, it's not a priority for them to lock up a guy like Marcus Smart. Now, I do feel like reality-wise, Marcus Smart is a great asset for a winning team because he's a great defender. He does a lot of the little things that you need. You always need a guy or two that gets down and dirty, that's down in the trenches and that does all the dirty work. And that Marcus Smart's like one of those guys, man. He great defense, can get steals. He rebounds decently for a point guard. So I think reality-wise, he could really help out a winning team. So even though I do agree with you, he's not a fantasy asset. If he's not with the Celtics, I can see him joining a contender to play, a role to help a team win. So anyways, I don't know. What do you think about it, Neil?
Yeah, I agree. I think he was on a very good team. He can help. I just don't know how he will. I don't have much expectations for him fantasy-wise with the Celtics or without them. It is interesting, though. Their team is really deep, so maybe they don't need him. Maybe they don't feel like they really need to pay him the money that he's demanding.
So, Neil, one other thing I wanted to touch on is there's been a little buzz here in the LA area that the Lakers could maybe turn their attentions to a guy like Damian Lillard. Now, to get a guy like Lillard, they would definitely need to give up some of their youngsters. I don't know, maybe Ingram or Kuzma, and then, I don't know, maybe Ball, maybe a draft pick, something like that. What are your thoughts on, could you build a good team with Lillard and LeBron as your base? And if it was you, would you be willing to give up youngsters like that to go get a guy like Damian Lillard? Are you high on Damian Lillard, Neil?
Yeah, it's a good question. First of all, I'm trying to think, if Damian Lillard went to the Lakers, what would his fantasy impact be? And it would probably be pretty significant. I don't think he would take as many shots. Oh, I don't know. LeBron's such a great facilitator. I think his fantasy impact would definitely take a hit if he went there. As far as like reality basketball, like would it make sense to maybe give up? I would definitely give up Lonzo Ball for Lillard, and maybe just as my impression, Lonzo, I'm sure, is a fantastic person. But I would give up Lonzo Ball. I would give up other young players. But the one that I would like to hold on to is Ingram. I think he still has the most potential to be a very good player in the NBA. I would give up Ball and Kuzma for Lillard for sure. As much as I like Kuzma.
Yeah,
so I think Damian's a great player, but I if you had to give up like Ball, Kuzma, and Ingram, that might be a bridge too far.
Yeah, I think if you can make that deal, you got to do it. I would definitely want to keep one of Ingram or Kuzma. So, like, hey, give Portland Ball, your pick between Ingram or Kuzma. I like you lean more Ingram, although there is definitely a large group of people here that would rather choose Kuzma. That might sound surprising, but a lot of people believe that Kuzma could be an elite player. So I would make the deal if you can get it. I love Damian Lillard's game. I think he would still have tremendous fantasy value. You're right, maybe takes a little small hit, but we saw Kyrie Irving have great value next to LeBron in Cleveland. LeBron has kind of said that he may change his game a little bit with the Lakers, play more on the block, so I'm curious, if Lillard can dominate the backcourt and LeBron kind of dominate that front court, there'd be plenty of fantasy value for both those guys. And I think it's a great deal, man. If you can do it, you got to try. So Damian Lillard, super young, never gets hurt. I do love his game. More of a scorer. I wish he facilitated a little bit more, but no complaints from me on Damian Lillard. But I don't know how much truth there is to all this buzz, or I don't know, are there really wheels on a deal? Is there really traction here, or is this just, people just kind of coming up with stuff? I don't know, Neil, but it's just something to keep an eye on. I don't know, man. What do you think?
Yeah, the more you talk about it, the more I sort of think about it, you might be right. Maybe Lillard's fantasy value doesn't take any hit. I forgot how great Kyrie was next to LeBron and how much a point guard can flourish in that environment. So maybe he would be just the same. Maybe he would just be doing that same thing down in LA. As far as like reality, I'd feel terrible for the city of Portland to lose Damian, but it might be kind of fun to see what he and LeBron could do together, see if they can, along with some of the young core, put up a pretty good team and see how they fight in the West. They would obviously need more help around them, but that's a very good starting point. LeBron certainly can't do much on his own. He needs at least one or two more all-star type players. I think they have even a shot against the Warriors. So that would be a great start.
Two interesting thoughts to what you just said. The first one is, Damian Lillard improved his fantasy value. It was amazing this year. And you got to think about it. He plays next to a guy in that backcourt that also is a high usage guy. So Damian Lillard did all of his damage playing next to a guy that also needs to have the ball, also is scoring dominant. So I think it could actually improve Lillard's value. Now he's just that main guy in that backcourt. I mean, yeah, he's sharing the ball with LeBron, but I think it's much easier to share the ball with LeBron than to share the guy with CJ McCollum. And then the second thing on what you were talking about from Portland's side, it sucks to give up a guy like Damian Lillard, but they got swept out of the first round of the playoffs, I think, and you just got to change things up. It just gets to a point where, okay, hey, maybe Lillard and McCollum, they're great players individually. Maybe they don't work together. Or maybe, hey, infuse some great young talent like Kuzma and Lonzo. They got Nurkic, and they got a bunch of wing guys with Aminu and Mo Harkless, and then a superstar in CJ McCollum. I think he's a future all-star type player. So, if you can mix it up and get some nice young assets for Lillard, it's not a bad thing. Also, I'm very biased because I'm in Southern California. I'm a Laker fan, so maybe I'm just trying to talk these Trailblazer fans into trying to accept the deal here. But I could see a good side of it from Portland's side as well. What do you think about that, Neil?
Well, I agree with you that Portland's kind of stuck in this place of how do they get better in a very competitive Western Conference, and I don't know what they can do given their restraints and some of their superstars right now. I don't know. So what to do? You're right that they may not be competitive in the playoffs in terms of competing for the Western Conference Finals with their roster. So maybe a change is needed. I just don't know if that change is going to facilitate that. It would be like a reboot, and they'd have to sort of build from the ground up. And as you mentioned on the show, that the Warriors are probably not going anywhere for the next 2 to 4 years. So maybe it's not a bad idea just to rebuild, knowing that you can't win the championship, or it's really going to be next to impossible with the Warriors where they are right now. So, and then just from like a fan perspective, change makes things more interesting, right? Because last year we had 4 years of the Cavaliers and the Warriors in the finals, which has been exciting in some ways, but others it's been kind of like pedestrian to see that over and over again. So yeah, change in the NBA kind of makes things more fun. So that shakeup I think would be fun for me to watch and hopefully entertaining for others. But I'm still trying to think about fantasy perspective. That's all I do. I'm not sure what to think about Willard in LA. So
well,
anyway,
we'll see what happens. Like I said, I don't know how much truth there is to this, or I don't know. It seems to me like it's just an idea. It's not really something that has a lot of legs to it. So let's see what happens. I'm real curious to see how the rest of free agency shakes out. But it's been a crazy free agency so far, man. So I'm excited for this upcoming season. It's like the whole landscape of the NBA just got completely restructured, and I'm looking forward to seeing how things are now. Neil, let's get into some quick Summer League news. And we got to start on a guy, Trae Young, who's just had a really rough start to Summer League in Utah, has not shot it great. I watched his game last night. He was 3 of 16 from the field. He only had 1 3-pointer, 6 turnovers. I've often said that the point guard position is the hardest to learn. You see guys, it takes a year or two for them to make it as a starting point guard. And I don't know, though, man. I wasn't high on Trae Young coming into the draft. I thought that Atlanta was crazy when they traded Luka Doncic to get Trae Young. I thought that was insane. Neil, what are your thoughts on Trae Young?
Yeah, I think we talked about him last week, and I had mentioned that I was going to avoid him. I really worried about his field goal percent and turnovers, which so far has sort of borne out here in Summer League. It's very early, though, to tell. But yeah, shooting has been really – I haven't seen too much of the actual games. I've seen some highlights, and it looks like he is taking it from even further than I thought, and sometimes really missing the mark. I will say I like his assist numbers, though. Those are holding up pretty well. So I guess maybe there's some hope there. But the 6 turnovers yesterday and the 3 for 16 and the 1 for 8 on 3, it's really disheartening. Because the one thing we thought about him coming in was he could be this elite deep three shooter and distributor. Like those were the two reasons for Curry comparison, right? He could shoot from anywhere, and then he could create and get balls to players that can score. So the latter part might be doing okay with the 7 assists. And then, of course, the defensive issues. But, yeah, his shooting has just been – it's so much tougher to shoot in the NBA than it is in college. We saw the same thing from Grayson Allen yesterday, right? Talking about his competitor on Utah went 2 for 13. So, and he was supposed to be like one of those great scorers coming out of the coming out of college. Not surprising at all. It's so much more difficult to shoot in the NBA because of the pressure, the spreading the floor, the defensive intensity is so much higher. So we'll see how some of these guys shake out. But yeah, I'm definitely going to avoid Trae Young. I don't know where he'll go, even ranked now. Maybe I'm definitely avoiding him. I'll just leave it at that.
So I got a couple thoughts on what you just said, and I'm really glad that you mentioned Trae Young's passing. That's the one positive. His ball handling and his ability to find the open man has been great, man. He is a great passer. So, you have to think his shooting eventually comes around, but just because he did it in college and he did it consistently. So you have to think that it's there, hey, maybe, it's just his very first few games on the professional level. But it is kind of scary that, he should be like Summer League is set up, his type of game. He should thrive in this type of atmosphere. And, going into the draft, he always sounded very confident, always said in every interview, I feel like I'm the best guy in this draft. I'm the best player in this draft. So it's weird to see him shoot it so poorly. But if he can turn that around, maybe he'll be good. But as you mentioned, for fantasy, this is a do not draft guy for me. If he shoots it poorly, turnovers are going to be ugly. I mean, that right there is enough to just scare me off of him. So on top of that, we saw in college, he faded significantly later in the college season. And that's why a lot of people worried physically, like he's small. Can he hang in the NBA? Because, it's an 82-game season in the NBA. You're playing against elite athletes, grown men that bring it every night. Like, can he hang with those, like, in that atmosphere? So, anyways, we'll see what happens. The other thing, I'm really glad you mentioned Grayson Allen. A guy I wasn't really high on coming into the draft, and he's won me over. Neil, this guy tested through the roof at the combine athletically. I didn't know he was such an athlete. Like, man, he's got a great vertical jump, high speed in the like shuttle runs, and in those they've got like this test where you got to run around these cones. Tested like the top of all the guys in the combine, and basketball wise, he's got a high IQ. He's shown he's got a pretty good game offensively, and then you mix that with his intensity and his desire to win, and I actually think now he's going to be a pretty good pro. So, even though he didn't have a great summer league game, I think he's going to be a pretty good pro, and I think he's a great fit for Utah, especially they got him pretty late in that first round. So, for fantasy wise, I'm not targeting Grayson Allen, just the guy I'm going to keep an eye on at the start of the season. In deeper dynasty leagues, though, could be a sneaky draft in your deep dynasty leagues. What do you think, Neil?
Yeah, certainly for this year, I don't think he's going to have much value. He will be on the bench most of the season, barring some crazy injuries. I guess I have to wait and see. I'm not big on him just yet. I haven't done too many deep dynasty leagues, so I don't know how that really bears out like 3 to 4 or 5 years in, and what else he's going against in terms of who you could draft over him. For him, I'm waiting and seeing. But I wanted to come back really quickly to Trae Young, if I could, and make one point that you brought up. Like, yes, summer league is set up for these guys that are coming in with high expectations to succeed. Remember, Lonzo Ball last year had a huge summer league, and everyone was talking about how great that was, like foreshadowing for his NBA season. And then obviously things got a lot more challenging once he got into the real league or the real season. So, this is really a bad sign that he's struggling this much in summer league. Let me hop over to one other guy though that I know there's a bunch of players we want to touch on, but one other one that I think is really interesting is Sacramento's Harry Giles. Have you been following this storyline?
So I'm really glad that you brought up Harry Giles. So this guy got drafted, not this past draft, the draft before that, due to a bunch of injury issues that he had. The Kings just decided to completely just redshirt him this first rookie year, right? Let him fully recover 100% from any injury problem he had. All the buzz is that he has looked amazing in all the workouts that they've had. It's like the secret that he may be a big part of their youth and core, and he's looked pretty good in summer league. Neil, what do you think?
Yeah, he's looked really good. He plays the center position, so that could impact. So not only could he start getting some serious minutes in the starter's role, it could impact Willie Cauley-Stein, I think, at that position. It's hard to say now about any impact, but it's something to keep in mind as you're drafting your later rounds for centers. I'm very curious to see if he can do well. He came into the league, like you said, injured, so he really fell to the end of the first round, I believe. But many players thought he was the best or many teams thought he might be the best athlete coming out of that class. So, very interesting to see how he does. And then, what about Bagley the third? He looked good in his first game, and now he's just not doing much. Do you have thoughts on him?
So I'm glad that you brought him up. Has been a little up and down. The first game, he looked amazing. I mean, he dunked it. I believe he dunked it on Mo Wagner of the Lakers, and I mean, just so bouncy. Hey, the other interesting thing I thought is it was greatly exaggerated how bad his defense was. He had the first two games, I think he was averaging 2.5 blocks the first two games, and this is a guy that I was hearing had zero defensive instincts. And so he's definitely showing he's got defensive instincts, so that's a great sign. So I'm not too worried about I think he just had a bad game, that second or third game. Just didn't shoot it good. I think he'll be fine. I think he's going to be great. One of the most offensively gifted players to come out of this draft, and we saw it in summer league. Very athletic, man. This guy moves like so smoothly and quickly. So I don't know, man. I still think the world of Marvin Bagley. And as you mentioned about Harry Giles also playing in the front court, I think these two guys might be able to play together. Probably not right off the bat, but I think eventually one day in the future, this is your front court of the future right here. Harry Giles with Marvin Bagley. And as you mentioned, Harry Giles was a McDonald's All-American. He was at one time the top high school player in his class. He was touted as probably being the number one draft pick if he didn't get hurt during his college year, during his year at Duke. So it'll be really interesting to see if his potential pans out. And this could be a really exciting front court, Neil. Yeah,
thank you. I thanks for that analysis on that starting front court. That's really that might really displace those guys that are currently there, like Cauley-Stein and I'm forgetting the other guy, but whoever was starting for power forward at
Scal. Okay, so I own this guy.
Scal is another one who's going to be. I don't know where he fits in the rotation now. We'll see how many minutes he. I mean, they're very crowded there with some young, really potentially good players. So that's going to be so interesting on how to draft.
Yeah, I think that Willie Cauley-Stein and Scal are kind of on the decline here. I think with the emergence, I mean, obviously they drafted Bagley with their number 2 pick. They're going to let him loose. And then all the buzz on Harry Giles, I think they're super high on him, and he's showing physically he's ready and he's gifted. So I think they're going to let him loose too. And you're absolutely right, Neil. It does not bode well at all for Willie Cauley-Stein and Scal, which bums me out, man, because I own Scal in a 30-team dynasty league, and I was hoping he was going to become a really good fantasy asset, and it's not looking great. But anyways, we'll hold our breath. Neil, I want to touch on one more guy. We're going a little long. I didn't think we'd have enough to talk about.
Are we? I had so many more guys to go to. Sorry.
We're like 35 minutes in. There's a guy we got to touch on because it was the guy at the top of my board coming into this draft, and he's looked like he deserved all that buzz. Jaren Jackson Jr., man. This guy looks like the second coming, Neil. He blocking shots, monster dunks. The first Summer League game, he had 8 3-pointers, Neil. This is a center power forward that had 8 3-pointers. Matt, he reminds me a lot of like a young Amari Stoudemire / Kevin Garnett. I'm super high on this guy, Neil. What do you think of Jaren Jackson Jr.?
I think he's going to get plenty of playing time there in Memphis, and I do worry about the shooting you can translate, right? Because it's the same dimensions on the court in the real NBA season. But sometimes I get a little nervous by high scoring players in Summer League because of who they're playing against. And obviously the results don't matter. So, but yeah, shooting is one thing that might be able to transfer over. I did see he went 2 for 4 yesterday. So yeah, he is in 3-point land. So he has been very impressive. And I think he is probably going to start, a power forward for them. And could get really good minutes. I said when we first did the draft recap, I talked about Doncic and Ayton being 2 guys who might make it into my top 60. Usually I don't have any rookies in my top 60. But Jaren Jackson may displace one of those or may join them. I have no idea. But right now he looks like the best promising rookie that we've seen, although we haven't seen Ayton or Doncic yet. So that'll be interesting.
Great call. We definitely I'm looking forward to Las Vegas Summer League, where we're going to see Ayton and Doncic and some of the other rookies. But, man, to touch on what you said, I do believe he can play at the power forward spot next to Marc Gasol. One of the reasons why he's so versatile is because he's got this outside shot, because he's a threat outside, and because he's so quick on his feet. He moves so well defensively, and his block potential, man. We love that for fantasy. A guy that can give you threes and also has block potential. It's like unicornish, right? Like that's why we call Porzingis a unicorn. That's why like we're so high on these guys, these bigs that can also shoot threes. It's like, oh, dude, and have defensive potential. I'm salivating, Neil. He gets me excited, man. And so, anyways, I'm so geeked on this guy. And I was a little I loved his game. I like him a lot. But when he went to Memphis, I was kind of like, it's a great pick, and he's going to be good. But for fantasy purposes, I'm changing my tune, man. I think he could be great for fantasy. I think he could be a really good fit next to Marc Gasol. Doesn't have much competition, I feel, at that power forward spot. JaMychal Green, we've seen his ceiling. We know who he is. This guy's ceiling, this guy's potential is like the stars, man. So yeah, Neil, I'm just I can't say enough good things about this guy.
Yeah, I hope you're right. I hope he does get the starting position. I forgot about JaMychal Green. I was trying to think who he has competition against. That'll be interesting to see. So I know Memphis is in a win now mode, and so at least that's sort of like the rumor out of their ownership, or the reporting that's come from their ownership. So it'll be interesting if they want to put him out there right away, or put him more in that come off the bench and play 20 minutes in the first half of the season. So I'm curious to see how his minutes get allotted, because that'll be a big impact on where he performs. But certainly he seems to have the potential that everyone talked about. I'm glad you're excited for him. I'm also glad you're going to Summer League to get to watch him play. Is he going to be there in person, or is he not going to?
I don't know. I'm not sure. And a little bit of bad news. My trip to Summer League is kind of up in the air. My ride, our friend Frank, who did the evening shows with us, he was my ride. He couldn't make it. So he was my ride out there, and now I'm kind of wondering if I should still roll out there or what, but I got some family stuff that just came up too. So my trip to Summer League that I was super excited about is kind of in hiatus right now. So
oh no,
we'll see. But I'm still, they're televising every single summer league game this year. So even if I can't make it out there, I'm going to be watching all the games. I can't wait to see all these guys. But hey, Neil, let's save the rest of that list for our next show. Definitely there's going to be more news. I'm sure a lot's going to happen still with the rest of free agency. More buzz from summer league and from all these workouts and everything going down. Let's wrap this up. Let's put a bow on it. You guys hit Neil up at ball with Neil on Twitter. I'm at Adrian Benjamins. You guys hit us up with some questions. We'd love to answer any questions you guys have. Neil, any closing thoughts on the show? What are your plans for this weekend?
Oh, my plans are very limited. My car's in the shop, so I can't get around here in this city. I've got I was gonna actually drive out to some place and go hiking this weekend, but now I don't know. So I will see.
Neil, man, you'd like camping, hiking, jumping on planes, world traveler, man. Dude, you're like my idol.
Oh my awesome. God. Yes. That doesn't really capture my life very well, but I was jealous of you going to summer league, so I hope it does work out for you.
Yeah,
it's a little far from here, from Chicago, but I was trying to squeeze it in. It's just a little pricey for me. So
well, hey, so I'll tell you what. If we miss this year's summer league, let's already plan summer league next year, Neil. I want to see you out there. It'll be finally the first time you and I can hang out in person. So if we miss this year, it looks like we're gonna probably. Let's get out there for next year's summer league. I think it'd be a lot of fun to hang out in Vegas, man.
That'd be fantastic,
Vegas, baby. All right, you guys. Hey, thank you guys so much for listening. Happy Friday, everyone. I hope you guys stay cool and stay out of the heat. Thanks so much, you guys. We'll talk to you later.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.